Peer-to-peer snail mail. Here's how you do it. First, you're going to get yourself an envelope. It needs to be big enough that you can put some instructions on the front of it so that people can know what's the deal, like what are they doing when they receive this. First off, you're going to put peer-to-peer snail mail or some other such designation at the top so people kind of understand like this isn't a normal piece of mail. Instructions. 1. Note your name, the date, the time, and location that you received this parcel. 2. Pass the parcel to someone who matches the following criteria. A, you know them personally. B, you consider them trustworthy. And C, they're more likely to know the intended recipient. Next is number 3. Do not use a postal service or commercial shipper. And then you need to put intended recipient and then put some information about the intended recipient. Now, the beautiful thing about this peer-to-peer thing is you don't have to know the exact precise location of the intended recipient, because the idea is to use your social network to get it to them anyway. So you don't have to know their exact address. You can kind of know like the city that they're in might be a good designator. You might want to put some kind of occupation. So you might want to say Jim Jones in Kansas, who is a baker. And you're going to have it given to another individual. You're going to want to put a table on there so that just so you can keep track. And this is kind of the fun part. I guess technically you don't need this. It's fun to see how many people it's gone through. So you're going to set up kind of like a table on there that has like the peer number. So 0 would be you, the sender. And then there's the name, the date, time, and location, like you asked in the instructions. And then that's just to kind of keep track of seeing where did it go, how long did it stay there, who was part of the chain. I came up with this idea after listening to someone who was talking about an experiment that was done about the 6 degrees of separation. Basically, I'm giving you a very terrible shortened version of it. Basically, they picked some random people out and they tried to get people to get it to them. That's how they came up with, on average, it took about 6 people to get it to the intended recipients, even though the original sender did not know who the in-person was. Theoretically, you could have the first 5 people don't actually even know the intended recipient, but they're like, okay, well, it says this person's in Massachusetts, so who do I know? Well, I got a cousin who is a truck driver. Sometimes he goes to Massachusetts. Maybe he can pass it along to somebody in Massachusetts. They just pass it along to someone that they know in Massachusetts that they talk to regularly on their shipping route. And then that person maybe is like, oh, that person sounds familiar. I think they go to so-and-so church. They give it to the pastor. The pastor's like, oh yeah, I know that guy. I'll give it to him next time he shows up. That kind of deal, where it just kind of like it gets passed along until it reaches the intended recipient. So I have some benefits that I wanted to talk about and some cons to talk about as well. So the benefits: 1, low cost. If you're going to use this method, then it should be pretty low cost. It should be given to someone you're going to run into anyway. You could really theoretically do it just based off of a favor system or an honor system if you know people who are just willing to be good people and good kind individuals. You can send it. Decentralized, so this can still work even if the centralized systems are shut down. If the United States Postal Service is shut down for an extended period of time, or FedEx, UPS, if something cataclysmic happens, you could still theoretically use this method to get your messages out just through social networks from one person knowing the next person. I trust. So this one might be more contentious because you are dealing with strangers in the middle part. Theoretically, you should at least know the first person you're giving it to. And if you find them to be a trustworthy person, then they probably know trustworthy people as well. And so they can pass it along to someone that they trust will actually continue it and not just open the letter or package that they've received, but they'll actually move it forward. Non-specificity. So I mentioned this earlier, but the only person who needs the specific location data is the last peer in the chain, and they would know it already because they personally know the recipient. So it's non-specific. You don't have to have the street address of the person who you're trying to send the mail to. 5 small world theory. It should take 5 to 7 peers on average. Once again, citing that study that I had recently listened to. Improvability. If the sender knows someone on the chain, they can reduce the degrees of separation. So let's say you establish contact by this method with somebody in Kansas, and you want to send you a message back through the chain, then you send a message back through the chain as well, and you happen to know somebody who was used in the initial like kind of searching chain, you can skip the first person that you used because you didn't realize that the other person that you do know is going to be part of the chain. Do you see what I mean? If you already know that person, you'd be like, oh, well, I don't have to give it to Timothy who gave it to Sarah. I can just go to Sarah because I already knew Sarah. I just didn't know she was going to end up as part of the chain. So those are some of the benefits of it. Of course, let's talk about some of the drawbacks. Obviously, I mentioned the trust aspect where someone could just take whatever's in the letter and just not send it, or they could burn it, etc. You know, if you get someone who's just like, this is stupid, I'm not going to pass this letter along to the next person, then in that case you would end up with dead send. I don't think most people are going to be like that, and especially if you give it to someone who's trustworthy, like they'll probably pass it more trustworthy people, and the folks who are kind of sketchy will just not end up in your network for the most part. But there is still that risk, so that's the drawbacks. Of course, being decentralized, it is going to take a lot more time. If you've ever used a decentralized service, even just like with the internet, you know that it can be more latent than if you were to use like a centralized server. Don't be expecting 1 week delivery if you're sending to someone across the world. That's just not realistic, especially if you're using volunteer labor, where it's just people using their spare time and their existing social networks to find the person that you're sending the letter to. You can't expect it to be speedy. So don't send any, time sensitive information using this method. This is more so like a fun or emergency last resort. For fun or for emergencies, probably you would use this where you just don't have their address. that could be it. You might be looking for your long lost cousin that lost contact with everybody and you don't know where they went, and you want to reestablish it. You give kind of like what they do or used to do, or you give whatever information you feel comfortable sharing with strangers about this person and send it out. So it's not going to be fast, is what I'm saying there. Another drawback might be, let's say you establish connection with somebody through a specific chain, and they send the letter back through, and someone was only able to send it the first time because like they were going on vacation. It's not going to be a solid connection all the time. It's going to be dependent on that individual's lifestyle and that individual's decisions on a day-to-day basis. If someone takes a trip to Bali every year and you tried to send a letter to someone who lives in Bali, well, someone in that chain has to physically fly over to Bali, and maybe they only do it once a year, right? So that's the only time that communication is going to be open via that channel. Otherwise, you're going to have to look for someone else. There's the danger, of course, that somebody dies in the middle of the transit. So if they have the letter and it's sitting on their desk and they die before they get a chance to pass it to the next person, well, that's a dead link, right? It's not gonna get to that person. So you can kind of mitigate that by like sending multiples, maybe through different channels, the same message. But at the end of the day, it's still possible for two people to die in the chain, and then it doesn't get to the intended recipient. Yeah, so anyway, that's just some thoughts about possibly using a peer-to-peer snail mail network. If you can think of any other benefits of it or any other cons to it, let me know down in the comments. Another con potentially is that the non-specificity comes back to bite you. There might be more than one Orthodox bakers in Miami named John Smith. Especially in larger cities, you're going to have trouble being able to just say, hey, where's John Smith? Well, there might be 1,000 people named John Smith in a big city. So that's one other downside. But with those situations, if you're going to be sending to someone with a common name or in a large city, you need to add more specifiers in the intended recipient so that it can kind of narrow down, who exactly you're talking about. And eventually maybe somebody will actually know that person. Just sent a letter out to a missionary in Brazil. So we'll see if it gets there and how long it takes, and then how long it takes to get back. I guess I'm kind of pinging him. It's a person I know at least exists. They're an archimandrite, so they should at least have some form of social life. I'm hoping I can pick up reception with peer-to-peer network there. Hopefully he gets there. Maybe he'll send something back, and if he does, then I'll know that it works, and I'll give you guys an update if he does end up sending something back. Thank you very much. Have a great day.